Hello and welcome to my sport-specific PowerPoint presentation on ladies Gaelic football. The first recognised playing of ladies Gaelic football goes back to a parish league in Courtclair in County Clare in 1926. However, it took until 1964 for Ballycommon from Offaly, Laura Redward from Tipperary and St Lomans from Westmeath to take part in a seven-a-side tournament. That was the initial beginnings of a league in ladies Gaelic football. In 1971 the first championship match took place, and finally in 1974 in Hayes' Hotel in Thurles, where the GAA was founded, the Ladies Gaelic Football Association was established. From humble beginnings with only few counties involved, they've gotten as far as a 56,114 person attendance at the 2019 Ladies Gaelic Football Finals. In 1974, the first All-Ireland final, Tipperary defeated Offaly, and now an All-Ireland takes place every year at junior level, intermediate level and senior level. The structure, similar enough to the men's structure in GAA, is that senior, intermediate and junior, with 4 divisions in the league. The first division of the league is entirely made up of senior teams, with Division 2 having 2 intermediate teams in it, currently having 3 intermediate teams in it, and the remaining 2 leagues are made up with intermediate and junior teams. There are 150,000 players playing the game, 33% of that is adults. The rules and format of the game and the structure are similar enough to the men's game, with the structure being a congress, central council, executive and central council, and then fixtures, disciplinary appeals and so on and so forth, going down to the annual congress, central council, executive of central council, and then the provincial councils. The team size is 15, the same as the men's game. The pitch size is the exact same, and then the scoring is the same as well. They do, however, the ladies play with a size 4 football comparative to the men's size 5. The ball may be picked from the ground, and unless a player is already on the ground, but they can play the ball on the ground in order to get it away from them to protect themselves from injury. 30 minutes per half, and there's a 15-minute half-time break. No deliberate bodily contact is allowed, so you cannot shoulder charge like in the men's game. However, at senior level, there does seem to be a little bit more leeway on that rule. The pitch length is 135 to 145 metres in length, depending on the ground, with the width being 80 to 90 metres. 2 sets of goalposts are 6.5 metres wide, 7 metres minimum height, with a crossbar 2.5 metres from the ground. Again, the exact same dimensions as the men's game. It's 3 points for a score under the bar and 1 point over the bar. 1 referee, 2 lines, men or women, and 2 umpires at either end. There are over 1,000 clubs in Ireland and overseas clubs including Britain, Canada, Spain, New Zealand and most recently South Africa. As I mentioned earlier, it is one of the most fastest growing games in the world. That attendance of 56,114 from 2019 is double the figure from 5 years previously, and probably more significantly, it's only 2,000 lower than the attendance at the Women's World Cup soccer final in Lyon. The development pathway for the coach and the athlete is in the next slide. There's a split between player development program and the county team setup. So the county team setup is adult, minor, under 16 and under 14, but there also is a player development program under 17, under 15 and under 13 that takes place with regional sessions to help develop players, and it's very much in a non-competitive format. The player development pathway is to help develop players who may not have made it onto inter-county panels. It's non-competitive, there are no trials, there's a selection process, no trials or selection process, and the focus is on inclusivity of everyone. There's a trophy, a plate and a cup and a shield on those festive days. There are 6 to 8 training sessions for each age group. Lots of practical coaching and understanding of the player development pathway, and workshop for all of those involved aimed at developing coaching in game situations. Festival days focus on development of skills and players and lots of participation with challenge and skills challenges, condition games and some small-sided games. The coaches are invited to give feedback on those player development pathway games and days. So the focus for coaches on the player development pathway would be very much knowing what your capacity within the club is. You need to have a 1-to-10 ratio of coaches to players. You need to be familiar with the objectives in it and identify opportunities to develop coaches within the club. They would try to have players from all clubs within the county on those days. Coaching pathways within the game are involved in playing and education workshops, a minimum of one per province, with coaching resources available to those who attend online. There are 3 coach observers per county involved in the training sessions. Coaches must be a member of the LGFA, they must be Garda vetted, and they must have Safeguarding 1 if they're coaching underage or they have players under 18 on their senior teams. Fundamentals of coaching comes first, followed by level 1, which must be over 18 and have 1 year of coaching practice. Moving on to the physical and physiological demands of ladies Gaelic football, the sport requires a mix of strength, speed, skill and agility. So lots of high speed running and jogging and jumping, landing, kicking, catching, cutting, foot pass and hand pass. So we really need to make sure that all of those areas are covered within our coaching sessions. Keane et al. 2010 noted that elite Gaelic football is characterised by high aerobic fitness, but it is also multifactorial fitness involved in the game. Ladies Gaelic footballers outperformed the reference group in sprints and in vertical jumps. Also noted that they had lean and muscular physique and that the player positions could but not necessarily be involved in different sizes. Therefore, you may have larger players playing at midfield, but that is not always the case. The physical makeup of the players that make the team could in some instances decide what way the team lays out. So if you have taller players on your team, you may opt for a higher ball into your forwards, whereas if your team is made up of predominantly younger, smaller, lighter players, this may lead to a faster game with more hand passing or close range kicking. As you can see here in Keane et al. 2010, on their study of Gaelic football versus a referent group, there aren't really huge differences between the Gaelic footballer and the reference group, which may indicate that this game is quite appropriate for all girls as opposed to those more physically suited towards the game, say like basketball, where players might have to be taller for the game. All 3 energy systems are used within the game, and so pre-season testing should include sprint work, VO2 max testing and power testing. There are a very low number of studies collating data on ladies Gaelic football, which hampers studies into the sport, and perhaps this is an indication that we should really look into doing more studies on the sport. Keane et al. 2010 cite VO2 max levels as 41 plus or minus. This was a university team and not an elite inter-county team. As an aside to this work, with my work with the Clare Ladies senior football team, I contacted another coach at a very successful team and asked for some basic figures on strength training, and was told that he wouldn't give out such information. So it leads me perhaps to ask if there's a difficulty in sharing information within the Ladies Gaelic football community. The use of technology and common injuries within the sport. So, as with all sports now, there is a huge number of technologies that we can avail of. The variety and cost effectiveness is a big question for us, and what will we gain from the use of technology? So, from my own experience within sport, We've got to look at how much can we spend. The budget is much smaller in ladies Gaelic football, even for after game meals, after training meals, and particularly for technology. So we've got to get the most bang for our buck. But that in general would be true of all sports. So also, even if we do have a lot of data, who is going to collate the data? Who's going to sit down and decide what we want to get from it? Within ladies Gaelic football or any ladies sport, we've got to look at our triad for bones, energy requirements and reproductive health. This is a massive factor for us, and what we've done with Clare Ladies Gaelic football is to ensure that the ladies have the Metrofit app and that we do a My Jump check before training and a wellness app to look at them. So other technologies in use are compression garments, which we can see from this 2017 study do seem to, they're low cost and their benefits after strength training. Again, use of RPE and our ACWR, our acute chronic workload, again not very expensive and quite easy to collate and give us some very useful feedback on it. So in 2019 it was discovered that 50% of athletes were, 50% of training weeks were outside of the safe zone for athletes. They also note that low cost methods such as these can be used to lower the incidence of injury. An opto jump system or similar allows us to test within the sport, and our huddle, which we use extensively with Clare Ladies both in games and in training sessions, is a very useful system for showing players what we might do to change situations or to improve either skills or technique within the game. Injuries within the sport. So 2018 study indicated that a lot of adolescent injury, coaches' attitudes to it were not where they quite should have been, and that there was a lack of knowledge on injury prevention programming in adolescent sport. Crowley found that instance of injuries in ladies football was significantly lower than in men's. This is possibly due to the lack of collision or less collision within the sport than in the men's game. In a 2-season prospective study of collegiate ladies football, O'Connor et al. In 2020 noted the injuries were predominantly acute and non-contact. Again, this follows up on the work done in 2011 by Crowley et al. In suggesting that it was more acute injuries. Hamstring injuries and strains are most predominant, and so it's recommended that a program such as the GAA 15 Plus would be implemented by teams to try and prevent hamstring injuries. Again, if we look at Brown et al. From 2013, reviewing injuries on a female Gaelic football team in Washington, we can see that the injuries were predominantly to the ankle and foot, fingers and knee. And furthermore, that they were muscular or fracture in nature as opposed to from contact injuries. Again, what we would see with that information is that our injury prevention program within our strength and conditioning program is vital for ladies Gaelic football, particularly in relation to hamstring injury and knee injury. Moving on to our overall plan for the season, to quote Mr. Keane here, fail to prepare, prepare to fail. So we have to make sure that we have a very significant and movable annual plan for the season. So our annual plan, we need to know our outline for the club season as well as the county season if we're a county coach. We need to have a good relationship with our club colleagues, and we need to share information. Particularly in ladies Gaelic football, we need to be aware that many of the coaches at club level do not have a sports science background and may not have had any access to sports science information. With the annual plan, we make sure it's in pencil so that we can make changes as we go along. This year, I suppose with COVID-19 has been an indication that plans can change and a lot of it is out of your hands and out of your control. Challenges within ladies Gaelic football, similar to the male code, are players playing dual with club, playing dual with college, and perhaps playing dual with county. Further issues have come up even in the last weeks, a number of weeks in Tipperary, with a collision between the GAA Camogie season and the ladies Gaelic football season, where players were expected to play on a Saturday and a Sunday. This was highlighted by senior Tipperary ladies Gaelic football players. So that's a challenge for coaches at county level. There still is probably less of a culture of strength and conditioning within the ladies Gaelic football than the men's code. Perhaps because the LGFA was set up in 1974 and the men's almost 100 years earlier. So everything seems to be, even though it's catching up, a little bit slower than perhaps we would like as strength and conditioning coaches. Our annual plan is our annual plan, and this section here just gives us all our dates for the year, our competitions, our phases, our goals for the league and our goals for the championship. The number of matches in each phase, pre-season, in-season, pre-season 2, in-season 2, and then pre-season 1, in-season 1 for our pitch sessions, our gym sessions, our matches, and the total number of sessions for the period. Our daily schedule then within the annual plan tells us what's going on in each week within the annual plan. So this is our pre-season schedule here. You can see the start of each week within testing, days off, field sessions and gym sessions. This is our gym overview for the annual plan. So we can see pre-season 1, the phase is anatomical adaptation, which takes place for the first 6 weeks, moving into hypertrophy, relative max strength, initial rate of force development, AA and hypertrophy, and then as we move into in-season 2, relative strength, initial rate of force development, power, and max power. This is a sample gym session from our pre-season. Excuse me. So within this gym session program, we can see that we have our activation, foam rolling, our mobility work, and snap downs, and then it's a circuit-based program. So pre-season circuit-based program focusing on hinge, push, pull, mobility work, and core strength. Again, it's a 30-minute program. Then we have a sample pitch session here for pre-season. So this is our Friday night squad session in Lees Road, where we have, again, very important to note within our planning is what do we have at our disposal. So for this particular session, we have the use of the 400 metre track from 8 to 9 p.m. and then we have an AstroTurf full pitch with full floodlights from 8:45 to 9:45 p.m. So that means we need to structure our session around what we have at our disposal. The session as well, as coaches, we have to be very conscious that that session is on from 8 p.m. in November on a Friday night, which can be quite wet and windy. So we try to keep the session moving as quickly as possible. It's divided up then into small blocks. Our warm-up, which is on the track, moving around the track. Our speed mechanics block for 5 minutes. Strength 1, skill 1, stamina 1, speed mechanics 2, strength 2, skill 2, stamina 2, and then cool down and static stretching. So each block has a little water break perhaps if required after it, and then we divide out the skills coaches and the strength and conditioning coaches to take each block so that each coach is ready when the girls move from block to block within the unit. Next we have our workload, which will give us an idea of what each session entails. So again, this is the pre-season workload. So we can see total volume, total intensity, total workload, average volume, average intensity, and our percentage overload. So we're aiming for 2 to 5% overload, and then with a drop of 10% for our unload week. This is our acute chronic workload. So again, we're trying to stay somewhere between 0.5 and 1.5 in our acute chronic workload. And that concludes my presentation on ladies Gaelic football. Thank you for your attention.